there is a wall of rock stretching over 400 miles across California. Older than most civilizations, and still barely understood by the people who live in its shadow. This is the Sierra Nevada. The oldest living things on Earth are up here. In the ancient Bristlecone pine forest, a tree called Methuselah has been standing for over 4,800 years. It was already 1,000 years old when the Egyptian pyramids were being built. On these slopes, giant sequoias grow. Trees so wide that humans carved tunnels through them just to prove they could. At the base of the range sits Mono Lake, a body of water far saltier than the ocean. Strange white towers of calcium carbonate rise straight out of the surface, and they have been quietly growing here since before the United States existed. And rusting into the hillside, the Chemung mine is exactly where the miners left it. After the gold operation produced over $1 million in high-grade gold, they just walked away, and the man who found the vein in the first place never saw a single dollar of profit. Tens of millions of people depend on this range to turn on their taps, and almost none of them think about it. This is the spine of California, the water tower of the American West, and the strange part hasn't even started yet. Somewhere in California, a stretch of land looks so much like another planet that filmmakers keep coming back to use it as one. And honestly, it's hard to blame them. These are the Alabama Hills, a playground of rounded, orange-tinted boulders resting at the foot of the Sierra Nevada. It sounds wild, but those smooth rocks weren't shaped by wind or rivers. They formed underground, then slowly peeled apart through weathering over time. Even the geology clashes beautifully. The flat valley floor and the towering mountains behind it are built from completely different rock types, pressed side by side. Many visitors don't realise the same ground beneath their boots has stood in for Mars, the Moon, and countless alien worlds in more than 100 films. The same thermal winds that rise off these sun-baked boulders make the area a surprisingly popular paragliding spot. From within the boulder fields, a natural stone window waits. Mobius arch, perfectly framing Mount Whitney like a photograph cut from the sky. It formed slowly through exfoliation, rock peeling from the outside in until a hollow replaced solid stone. In a way, it didn't rise from the mountains. The mountains quietly rose around it. And just above, bighorn sheep pick their way across the rock face, with confidence that feels wildly optimistic for an animal that size, but perfectly calculated all the same. Their hooves are basically built-in climbing shoes, with a hard outer edge for gripping rock and a soft, rubbery centre that works like a suction cup. No gear needed. The most jaw-dropping part isn't the climbing. It's two males backing up, charging full speed, and smashing heads so hard the crack carries across the valley. What saves them from knocking themselves senseless is a double-layered skull with a built-in shock absorber. The one with the biggest, most curled horns wins the most fights and attracts the most females. So in Bighorn society, your horns are your resume. These sheep were nearly wiped out statewide, not by predators, but by diseases from domestic livestock their immune systems had never faced, and their slow recovery is remarkable. Their eyesight is sharp enough to catch movement far across open ground, and up on these rocks, they hold the high ground and know how to use it. As the cliffs slowly flatten, the weathered silhouettes of Alabama hills give way to the wide, open plains of Owens Valley ahead. Here, the valley lies between two of the country's most extreme mountain ranges, pressed into a long, flat basin. The most shocking thing about it is what's missing. A massive lake and green farmland drained almost overnight when a distant city rerouted its water, leaving generations of local families to watch their wells run dry and crops fail. Even now, the exposed lake bed makes its own weather. When the wind rises, it hurls dust so thick it can erase visibility and transform a clear afternoon into a brownout within minutes. Yet despite looking barren from a distance, the valley floor is quietly packed with life. Low shrubs, dry grasses, and scattered wildflowers surviving in soil most plants would refuse. That resilient scrub draws mule deer down from the higher slopes, and as evening light fades, they spread across the flats, grazing as if the valley were theirs. They are among the few large animals built for this area's wild temperature swings, their coat shifting from a thin reddish summer layer to a thick, hollow winter coat that locks in warmth. In the dry season, they seldom drink, drawing nearly all their moisture from the plants they browse. Up close, those huge ears aren't decoration. They rotate independently, scanning different directions and catching the faintest rustle. Every year, males grow a brand new rack of antlers from scratch, the fastest bone growth known in the animal world. In the heat of mating season, males lock antlers with such focus that danger fades from their minds, and a few don't survive the struggle. Meanwhile, the does run the quiet strategy, memorising feeding paths, water spots, and safe ground with the kind of precision that keeps everyone alive through the harshest months. When a fawn is born, It carries almost no scent. Its mother hides it in tall grass, trusting stillness more than speed. The rocky formations of Alabama Hills and the open valley of Owens Valley lead directly to Mount Whitney, rising in the distance. They sit quite literally at its base. It is the highest point in the continental United States, and yet you can drive to the trailhead and walk to the summit without ropes, harnesses, or climbing equipment at all. From a distance, it looks like a jagged stone wall punched straight through the sky. So sharp and so close, it feels less like a mountain and more like the edge of the world. But that height comes at a cost. The summit sits so high, the air holds roughly half the oxygen available at sea level. The weather here is unpredictable. A clear morning can turn into a lightning storm by early afternoon with little warning, and the exposed summit quickly becomes one of the most dangerous places to be. Near the tree line, a flash of colour breaks through the grey. Blue jays, bold and loud, completely at home where most creatures wouldn't linger. That bright blue isn't really blue. The colour appears because light reflects off their feather structure, like thousands of tiny prisms. But looks aren't their only trick. They can copy the call of a hawk so accurately that other birds scatter in panic, clearing the feeding area without a single fight. That alone makes them one of the craftiest birds alive, essentially weaponizing fear without ever throwing a punch. And if deception fails, they switch tactics, mobbing birds much larger than themselves, harassing hawks, owls, even eagles with relentless noise until the intruder leaves. Away from the drama, they handle another task, burying thousands of seeds each season and remembering most months later, while the forgotten ones sprout into new trees. They mate for life and stay together year-round, not just during breeding season, a rarity among birds. Chicks are born completely helpless and nearly featherless, but within a few weeks they grow bold enough to mimic their parents' alarm calls. Because they're loud and conspicuous, they often become the valley's early warning system when danger appears, alerting every nearby animal, whether they mean to or not. Not far from where they chatter and scold, a much bulkier neighbour sits motionless on a rock, soaking up what little warmth the altitude allows. The hoary marmot. They spend over half their lives asleep below ground, because winter leaves no other way to survive, and when spring arrives, hunger drives them to graze almost non-stop, rebuilding fat reserves before the cold closes in again. While they sleep, Bodie never quite rests, a ghost town frozen mid-collapse, where the only rule is simple: don't touch anything that isn't yours. gold transformed this hillside almost overnight into one of the wildest boomtowns in the West. Saloons roaring, gunfights flaring, dreamers arriving hopeful and leaving broke. Then the gold ran out, and people vanished just as fast. Dishes still on tables, clothes in closets. A card game paused mid-hand, as if the players stepped out and never returned. Today, the state keeps Bodie in arrested decay. No restoration, no polish, just bracing the walls and letting time finish the job. Rangers even track the so-called curse, letters from visitors who pocketed rocks or nails, then mailed them back after streaks of bad luck, asking the town to lift whatever it started. Some visitors, and even a few park rangers, say they've heard children laughing inside empty buildings where no children stand. What unsettles people most are the sudden cold spots in certain rooms. No drafts, no broken windows, nothing to explain the chill, even under a warm afternoon sun. As the quiet slips away, the road rises toward the Bristlecone pine forest, where some trees were already alive when much of human history was just beginning. By the time the first pharaohs planned their pyramids, these bristlecones were already mature, and they still stand, steady through the rise and fall of civilizations. Up close, their twisted skeletal forms aren't signs of weakness, but refinement. Wind and cold strip away softer layers, preserving only the hardest heartwood. Over time, they persist not through force, but by growing very slowly and staying so dry inside that rot, insects and disease have almost nothing to feed on. The oldest living organism on Earth stands somewhere in this range, though its location is kept secret, after a previous record holder was cut down simply to count its rings. That loss was real. A researcher felled what was then the oldest known specimen, only learning its true age once it was gone. From here, the mountains give way to Columbia State Historic Park, once celebrated as the gem of the Southern Mines, and still wearing the title well. It earned that name because while most gold rush towns were built of wood and canvas, this one rose in brick and iron, solid structures built to last. The town rose almost overnight as Peep, turning a bare hillside into a settlement that still runs inside its original buildings. A working Wells Fargo office, an old-fashioned candy shop, a blacksmith, and a saloon pouring drinks. When the gold thinned, people left as quickly as they came, and while many boomtowns vanished, Columbia stayed intact, spared in part by the lack of a major highway. Today, you can still pan for flakes, as if the earth never quite surrendered everything. Just over the hills, Mono Lake has been here far longer than the rush ever lasted, with the marks to prove it. This lake predates most nearby volcanoes and mountain ranges. It was here before the Sierra Nevada fully rose around it. Hard to believe, but the water here is so salty and alkaline that you'd float higher than in the ocean and come out feeling scrubbed clean, as if you'd soaked in liquid soap. Almost nothing lives in this water. No fish, no frogs. Yet it sustains huge flocks of migratory birds each year. Alarmingly, the lake drained as its feeder rivers were diverted to a distant city, and by the time anyone noticed, the shoreline had dropped and the ecosystem was already in decline. Efforts to stop the draining worked, and the lake is slowly recovering, but it will take far longer to refill than it did to empty. And as the waterline shifts, the Tufa towers emerge from the glassy surface like an alien world. Pale limestone spires reflected in turquoise water, framed by the snow-dusted Sierra crest behind. Each spire is hollow and fragile on the outside, but dense and packed on the inside. Touch one wrong, and pieces crumble off. Yet despite their fragile appearance, they are still technically alive. As long as freshwater springs continue pushing up from below, new limestone is being added even now. At sunrise, the towers glow warm gold against the blue lake, not from any special mineral, but from low light touching pale limestone, turning the shoreline into something that looks more like a painting. Look carefully, and you'll notice no two towers stand alike. Each column formed around a different freshwater spring, shaped by its own flow rate, pressure, and direction. That pattern tells a story of time. Towers near the water are the youngest, and those farther inland the oldest. And if the lake ever returns to its original height, every spire visible today would sink beneath the surface again, the whole forest of stone, hidden underwater once more. Just north from the lake, Panum Crater sits like a scar on the earth, left behind by a volcanic eruption so recent the obsidian inside still has sharp edges. This crater is part of a chain of volcanoes across the region. Not an isolated blast, but a line of eruptions where the earth broke through its surface again and again. At the crater's centre sits a plug of obsidian, pure volcanic glass, formed when lava cooled so fast it couldn't crystallise, creating edges once sharp enough to use as cutting tools. As nature split this ground from below, miners at Chemung mine tried to rip it open from above. And ever since, the mountain has been quietly reclaiming the upper hand. For a time, though, human ambition held its ground. This wasn't a small operation. It used heavy machinery, blasted far into the rock face, and hauled ore across brutal terrain long before most homes even had running water. The head frames still standing here were built fast and cheap, meant to be temporary, yet they outlasted the very people who raised them. Around them, rusting equipment sits frozen mid-task, looking less like a ruin and more like a job site, where everyone simply stopped showing up one morning. Part of the reason is isolation. The mine is so remote that hauling machinery out cost more than it was worth, so it was left in place, which is why so much still stands today. While everything here rusts and slips back into the hillside, what waits at Sequoia National Park has done the opposite, growing steadily, without hurry, for longer than recorded history. How these trees survive is fire. They don't just tolerate it, they depend on it. Their cones stay sealed for years and only open in the heat, releasing seeds only after flames crack them apart. Unfortunately, decades of aggressive fire suppression disrupted that cycle, and the trees struggled to reproduce. These trees aren't easily harmed by insects, rot, or disease. Their bark's natural compounds protect them, allowing a fallen sequoia to lie on the forest floor for generations before breaking down. All of this unfolds in conditions almost perfectly tuned for them. Warm enough to grow, fed by snowmelt, yet high enough to stay cool. The park protects many things, but it was built around one, the giant sequoia, standing right at the centre of it all. These aren't just tall trees, they are the largest living things on Earth by volume, which means no animal or other organism occupies more physical space. The most famous one here, General Sherman Tree, is so immense that its lowest branch alone outweighs entire mature trees. The branch, not the trunk. A single tree holds so much water in its trunk that it acts like its own reservoir, pulling moisture from the ground and storing it to endure long, dry seasons. Today, the greatest threat comes from prolonged drought and increasingly intense wildfires, burning hotter than the low, natural fires these forests once relied on. Their protection lies in their bark, thicker than most people are tall, low in flammable resin, and formed like natural armour that resists most flames. In the canopy of these giants, one bird has made itself completely at home: the great-tailed grackle, bold, loud and clever enough to survive wherever it chooses to settle. Males are glossy black with an iridescent sheen, while females are smaller and plain brown, nearly invisible beside them. Confidence seems built into the species. It doesn't hide or retreat, and rarely gives up a branch once claimed. Its voice matches that presence, mimicking not just other birds, but mechanical and human sounds, building a shifting playlist from everything it hears. Beyond appearance and sound, their intelligence stands out. They use tools, snatch food mid-air, and pry open sealed containers, with problem-solving skills closer to ravens and crows. Because they're loud, common and adaptable, many people dismiss them as pests, overlooking how behaviourally complex they really are. That adaptability shows in their rapid spread, expanding into cities, forests and parks in recent decades, moving into new spaces as if they had always belonged there. Then suddenly, all that noise falls away at Moro Rock, a bare granite dome where the forest drops and the sky takes over completely. It didn't form by collapse. It's a single mass of granite pushed up from below and revealed as softer rock wore away. From the top, the view stretches beyond the park, on a clear day reaching the Central Valley, distant ranges and the full sweep of forest below, all from one spot. Somewhere in that forest below, a mountain line is already moving, silent, patient and completely invisible until it decides otherwise. This cat doesn't chase. It waits, watches and closes the gap so carefully that most prey never hears it coming. When the moment arrives, power replaces patience. It can leap farther in a single bound than most cars are long and touch down almost without a trace. Yet the most unsettling thing about these animals isn't their strength. It's that thousands hike through these forests each year without knowing they were observed, and the lions simply chose not to act. That restraint follows a rhythm. A single giant cat patrols a massive range, walking the same routes night after night and checking every corner with quiet routine. However, they are entirely solitary. No pack, no partner, yet they bring down prey far larger than themselves, relying on precision and timing instead of numbers or brute force. But even mastery has limits. Mountain lions are disappearing from parts of their range as roads and development fracture their habitat, isolating them from mates and new territory. Sharing these same mountain streams and completely unbothered by either predator, is the American dipper, a small, unremarkable-looking bird with a survival trick so strange, it barely seems real. At first glance, nothing about it suggests what comes next. Without warning, it dives and walks along the bottom of fast mountain streams, the current against its wings pinning it to the riverbed as it hunts insects and larvae. To make that possible, it even has a second transparent eyelid that slides over its eye like built-in goggles, letting it see clearly underwater while the stream blurs around it. And when it resurfaces, the performance continues. Dippers sing year-round, even in the middle of winter, even in freezing temperatures. And their song is loud enough to be heard clearly over the roar of a rushing mountain stream. That resilience, however, depends on something fragile. Because they rely entirely on clean, fast-moving streams, they are one of the first species to vanish when water quality drops. If the clear water keeps the dipper alive, at Cerro Gordo, it was silver that drew people in, and the absence of everything else that drove them out. Drawn by that promise of metal, this mine didn't just produce silver. It helped fund early Los Angeles, sending out so much that a rising desert city was shaped by this single hillside. For a moment, fortune felt effortless. The ore lay so close to the surface that miners barely dug, and when it ran out, the boom collapsed just as fast. Long after the rush faded, the mine cycled through private hands until a young buyer impulsively bought the ghost town and moved in alone to restore it, with no plan or experience. Visitors report machinery in sealed buildings, footsteps on bare floors, and shadowy figures in rooms untouched for generations. Meanwhile, the buildings race against time. The dry desert air that once preserved them now yields to rot and collapse, and some are already beyond saving. Emerald Bay couldn't be more different. Cold, blue, and surrounded by granite. A pocket of Sierra Nevada water that looks like it was dropped there by accident. This inlet was carved out by a glacier, and the water here is remarkably clear, fed almost entirely by snowmelt, with very little sediment or pollution flowing in. Yet even that purity is fragile. A single invasive plant has spread for years, and if it takes over, scientists warn it could cloud the lake and alter the ecosystem permanently. At the centre of that blue sits something unexpected. A small island, Lake Tahoe's only natural one, topped by a stone tea house, carried up piece by piece. That is Fanette Island, the only island in all of Lake Tahoe sitting alone in the middle of the cove like it was placed there on purpose. It's a leftover of the same glacier that carved Emerald Bay. When the ice melted, it left behind a stubborn chunk of granite it couldn't grind down, forming the lake's only island. And then, unexpectedly, someone decided that bare granite wasn't enough. Someone built a stone tea house on top, ferried furniture across by boat, and served afternoon tea there. Today, the tea house still stands, a small stone structure perched on a granite island in the middle of a glacial bay, empty and slowly yielding to weather and time. Because the island is reachable only by boat or a swim through cold open water, most of the year it sits untouched. No visitors, no upkeep, just wind, water, and an empty stone room. Just around the shoreline, Vikingsholm waits, a stone mansion so out of place against the Sierra backdrop that most people do a double take the first time they see it. Up close, the illusion deepens. Dragon heads, a sod roof, painted beams, and fortress-thick stone walls, all hand-built to reflect authentic Scandinavian design. Look higher, and it gets stranger. The roof grows real plants, a traditional Scandinavian insulation method that makes Vikingsholm one of the few buildings with a living lawn on top. After the owner died, the mansion sat empty for years before the state stepped in to preserve it, and even now only a fraction of its original furnishings remain. Sharing the trails, completely unbothered by foot traffic, is the California quail, the state bird, and impossible to miss. That small teardrop plume bobbing on its head with every step looks less like a natural feature and more like someone glued a tiny hat to a bird and forgot to take it off. They don't fly from danger, they run fast, weaving through brush like they've done it 1,000 times, because they have. When the flock feeds, one bird always stands higher than the rest, watching as a full-time lookout while everyone else eats, and it never takes a break. It sounds crazy, but these birds hatch enormous broods at once, and within hours the chicks are already moving and foraging completely on their own. No hand feeding, no waiting around. Sadly, as low ground cover gets cleared for development, quail lose the only protection they have, and without it, every predator in the area suddenly has a clear shot. Hawks strike from above, foxes from the ground, and snakes from below, which is why they never stray far from cover and why that lookout post is never empty. Just north of here is a gold rush town, North Bloomfield, so completely forgotten that the forest has been quietly reclaiming it since the miners left. Back when it was alive, this town didn't pan for gold, it blasted for it, firing jets of water powerful enough to tear mountainsides apart in hours and wash the rubble downhill. The damage spread far downstream, clogging rivers and burying farms and towns under mud and gravel until the destruction reached court and ended the operation. Walking through the ruins feels eerie. The church, hotel and saloon still stand in slow collapse. Weeds through floorboards and trees through the walls. Just past the buildings lies the mining pit, a massive wound carved by water pressure, its raw cliffs slowly being reclaimed as nature presses back in. Not far south, the earth made its own kind of scar. Devil's Postpile National Monument, where volcanic rock cracked into such perfect columns. Here, a thick pool of lava cooled so slowly it fractured into near-perfect hexagons. The same pattern as dried mud, but in solid rock, taller than a two-story building. That steady cooling is exactly why this is one of the world's finest examples of columnar basalt. Not for its size, but for how straight and uniform the columns still stand. Yet the top is even stranger. A glacier later shaved the columns flat, leaving a smooth stone floor patterned with honeycomb shapes. In fact, the whole monument is surprisingly small. It covers so little ground that most visitors see everything it contains within a single short walk. The river running past the columns has one more trick. Rainbow Falls, where the water drops hard enough to throw mist into the air and bend light into colour right in front of you. The rainbow isn't luck, it's physics. Sunlight passing through that spray splits into colour on a reliable daily schedule. What most people miss is that the rainbow moves with the sun. Shift your timing by a few hours, and you see a completely different arc, angle, and intensity. Below it, the plunge pool stays ice cold year-round, and the force of the drop is strong enough to pull anything beneath the surface straight down before it can come back up. The stark formations of Devil's Postpile give way to the serene expanse of Mammoth Lake, framed by surrounding peaks. Here, the ground is still volcanically active. Small earthquakes rattle through regularly. Hot springs bubble nearby, and whatever lies beneath hasn't finished moving yet. Even so, people live here permanently at an altitude where most visitors spend their first day just trying to breathe normally. Winter only raises the stakes. The snow doesn't just fall here. It buries. Buildings disappear, street signs vanish, and residents shovel their roofs just to stop them from caving in. In many ways, the wildest thing about Mammoth Lakes isn't the snow or the volcano, it's that a town runs here year-round at all. Just a short distance from the main lake, Twin Lake sits among the trees, two smaller lakes sharing the same calm valley. They may look identical, but one sits slightly higher than the other, draining gently into the lake below. When the air goes perfectly still, the reflections become almost ridiculous. Peaks, trees, and sky mirrored so sharply that the lakes appear twice as bottomless as they really are. During winter, both freeze completely solid, forming thick, load-bearing ice that wildlife crosses without hesitation. The cold doesn't get the last word here. Natural hot springs bubble up from the ground, warm enough to soak in and open to anyone willing to find them. That warmth begins as rain and snow seeping underground, drifting toward buried heat before slowly rising back to the surface. More than the heat, the real surprise is the setting. Naturally warm water, snow-covered peaks overhead, open sky, and no entrance fee. Meanwhile, clinging to tree bark and moving headfirst toward the ground is the red-breasted nuthatch, small, confident, and doing something almost no other bird attempts. This one runs straight down, scanning the bark from a completely different angle and uncovering insects and hidden seeds others already passed by. And that what strategy makes it one of the cleverest foragers in the forest. Not because it works harder, but because it simply looks differently. They drill into soft, rotting wood to pull out insect larvae, turning dead and dying trees into a fully stocked pantry. When food is plentiful, it tucks seeds and insects into bark crevices across its territory and remembers exactly where they are. Its nesting strategy is just as inventive. They smear sticky tree resin around the entrance of their nest hole, creating a natural barrier that deters predators and rival birds while the parents are away feeding. And when resources truly run low, boldness takes over, and entire populations can move far beyond their usual range almost overnight. For its size, it's remarkably fearless, mobbing birds many times larger and sharing predator alerts with mixed flocks as if size were merely a suggestion. Even cleverness has limits. The red-breasted nuthatch disappears wherever dead trees are cleared, losing both food and home. Above the tree line, the minarets are impossible to miss, a row of sharp volcanic peaks that make everything else in the range look ordinary. These spires aren't just mountains, They're the hardest rock left behind after softer layers wore away, shaped into sharp points by ice and wind. The stone is so brittle that pieces fall, edges shift, and the skyline subtly redraws itself decade by decade. They rank among the Sierra Nevada's most demanding climbs, not for their height, but for sharp, unstable rock, and a silence broken only by wind over bare stone. While they crumble on their own terms, Empire Mine was torn apart deliberately, a place where the pursuit of gold went so far underground. This wasn't a lone prospector. It grew into an industrial operation with steam machinery, hundreds of workers, and non-stop extraction among California's most productive mines. And the scale went even deeper, with tunnels stretching so far underground they could cross the state, every foot dug, blasted, and hauled by hand until gold mining was no longer profitable. At the surface, the oddest sight is the owner's cottage, gardens and polished walls directly above a humming industrial operation. Inside the preserved buildings, original machinery still stands exactly where it was left. Less like a museum, more like everyone stepped out for lunch and never came back. Even now the story lingers. Water in the tunnels looks clear, but is poisoned from decades of mining chemicals. Looking east, Convict Lake appears untouched. Perfectly clear water, cliffs rising on every side, and completely calm. The name has nothing to do with the water. It comes from a violent pursuit ending in gunfire here, leaving a name that lasted long after. Beneath the calm, a glacier carved the solid rock into a hollow, now filled with water. The water stays cold enough year-round to slow decomposition, almost completely, so anything that sinks here is preserved far longer than in warmer places. Over the seasons, the colour shifts in surprising ways. Blue-green in early summer, as snowmelt carries glacial sediment in, then glass clear by late season, once the flow slows down. The cliffs aren't just dramatic, they're actively shedding rock, and the rubble piling up at their base has been building since the ice retreated and left those walls exposed. Meanwhile, decades of fish stocking have quietly altered the lake's natural balance. And yet, the lake reflects the mountains perfectly. But the moment you lift your eyes from the water, Mount Morrison takes over, sharp and commanding against the sky. Named after a posse leader who died in the same shootout that gave the lake its name, the mountain and the water below share the same violent story, one in stone and one in reflection. The rock forming this mountain is some of the oldest in the Sierra Nevada, twisted violently so its layers run at sharp angles instead of flat. Here, the weather changes quickly, with calm lake skies turning to wind and clouds higher up in just hours. From here, we follow the range toward Forest City, a ghost town slowly reclaimed by trees, board by board, for longer than anyone can remember. This was once a real, working mining settlement. People built homes here, raised families here, and genuinely believed this place had a future. Settlers named it Forest City for the dense pines that made it feel built within the trees, and when the gold ran out, the town vanished within a generation. Today, only scattered wooden ruins, rusted mining equipment half buried in the ground, the occasional stone foundation where a saloon or store once stood, and a single historic church remain, the rest having sunk back into the soil. From these ruins we step into Desolation Wilderness, where ice did such a thorough job of scraping this land clean that even the name couldn't sugarcoat what it left behind. Here the ice was thick enough to bury a skyscraper, and when it melted, it left bare granite, carved bowls, and over 100 lakes in the holes it punched. The ground isn't soil but exposed granite, scraped so clean that trees struggle to grow, giving the place a moon-like look. What makes it strange is the silence. No towns, no roads cutting through, no permanent structures of any kind, just open granite and cold water in every direction. And yet it's one of the country's most visited protected areas. So on any summer weekend, California's most desolate place is packed with people carrying tents and energy bars. Every visitor here is required to carry a permit, because without limits, the sheer number of people coming through would finish what the ice started and strip the place completely bare. Living quietly in the rock fields is the American pika, a tiny round animal that looks like a stuffed toy but is actually one of the toughest cold weather survivors in all of North America. It doesn't hibernate. Instead, it spends summer cutting and stacking grass and wildflowers under the rocks, building a food supply that has to last the entire winter. They can overheat in what humans call a nice day, and with nowhere to escape, they're among the few animals truly threatened by heat. Because of this, the pika is considered one of the first mammals likely to go extinct purely due to climate change. Not hunting, not habitat loss, just a world getting too warm for it to exist. From these rock fields we reach Downieville, a gold rush town jammed so tightly into a mountain canyon that it barely has room to exist. It born almost overnight. Within months, a completely empty canyon had saloons, shops, a jail, and a population that rivaled major cities of the time. At its peak, it was one of California's most important towns, producing so much gold that it was even considered as a potential state capital. When the gold dried up, the town never rebuilt, leaving streets and buildings preserved exactly as miners left them. That frozen-in-time quality has become its greatest asset, making the town the very place people drive hours to see. From this frozen canyon, the ground itself starts to change. At Lassen Peak, the Earth is no longer just rock and history. It's still breathing, still hot, and very much alive. Among the largest plug dome volcanoes on Earth, it formed as lava, too thick to flow, simply heaped over its vent and solidified. It isn't extinct, having once erupted violently and buried forests in ash and mud. Steam vents today show the system below is still active. Around the peak, the ground turns chemically hostile. Boiling mud pools, sulfur vents, and acidic springs at the surface. Conditions more like an ocean vent than a mountain forest. Yet wildflowers and wildlife grow right to the edge of these thermal scars, life pressing as close to the heat as it can without crossing the line. As the land cools again, Dutch Flat emerges, a town that had its moment of noise and money, then went quiet, leaving its old buildings to carry the story. Once a small settlement, it became a key frontier crossroads where miners, railroad workers, and merchants passed through the Sierra. Few people realize Dutch Flat helped shape the Transcontinental Railroad, but once the line moved east and the gold faded, the town's energy faded just as quickly. Some of the original buildings still stand today, not preserved behind glass but sitting along the street beneath the open sky, weathered but stubbornly intact. It's hard to imagine that this quiet place once held busy hotels, loud saloons, and a main street abundant with gold rush money. Further south from this quiet town, the world changes completely. The Sierra National Forest takes over, with towering trees, pale granite walls, and mountain lakes in every direction. Beneath those peaks, the western slopes are soaking wet, while the eastern side remains bone dry. Two entirely different worlds sharing the same mountain spine. Hiking here feels alive in every sense. The range is still rising, the ground slowly pushing upward, and every step takes you over terrain that hasn't finished forming. Hidden among the wetter slopes is one of California's rarest animals, the Sierra Nevada red fox, so elusive that wildlife cameras can go years without spotting one. And yet life presses into the extremes. The Yosemite toad survives at elevations that would stop most other creatures cold, surviving conditions that seem almost impossible. From these slopes, the forest softens and descends, and waiting just below, glittering through the trees, is Bass Lake. Here's the twist. It isn't actually a natural lake at all. A dam was built, water rose, and a quiet meadow simply disappeared beneath the surface. The lake even got its name as a punishment. A lumber company poisoned all the fish, was ordered by the government to replace them, chose base, and the name just stuck. Surprisingly, Bass Lake stays crystal clear as rain and snowmelt filter through granite mountains, while boating, wakeboarding, kayaking, fishing and hiking unfold across its waters. At the lake's quiet edge, threading through the reeds, a small strange bird reigns, the pied-billed grebe, a creature that follows rules all its own. This is a water bird that barely flies. It hunts here, sleeps here, raises its family here, and the moment danger arrives, it simply sinks back into the water and disappears. It can actually control how much of its body floats, slowly releasing trapped air from its feathers like a tiny feathered submarine, vanishing without a single splash. Its precision shows in every movement, from hunting to diving. It dives for fish, frogs and crustaceans, and its thick bill is strong enough to crack open shellfish. Leaving the lake behind, and the Sierra Nevada reveals a wilder side, the Ansel Adams Wilderness, a place so dramatically carved by glaciers that even photographs struggle to do it justice. Everything here, sharp peaks, curved valleys, and scattered lakes here, were carved not by wind or rain, but by glaciers slowly grinding across solid granite. It sounds crazy, but those glaciers left a permanent mark, carving bowl-shaped hollows that later filled with snowmelt, creating the jewel-like lakes that shimmer across the terrain today. Even without roads cutting through it, this place remains roadless. No highways, no parking lots, no shortcuts. The calm and mirror still, Socha Lake sits at the gateway, often the last quiet stop before the terrain turns serious and the real mountain country begins. Darting through the pine canopy, the Black-Burnian Warbler is small enough to miss with a flame-orange throat, sharp black markings moving through the treetops like a lit match. It hunts at the very tops of the tallest trees, avoiding competition below and claiming the upper floor almost entirely for itself. Its song is just as extreme as its colours, a call so high-pitched that older people often cannot hear it at all, the frequency simply too thin for ageing ears to catch. The treetops where the warbler reigns eventually give way to broader ridges, and here the Allegheny rises, a quiet town shaped by the legacy of California's gold rush. Most people don't know. The gold here never ran out. Long after other towns died, Allegheny kept producing from quartz veins too full to quit. The gold wasn't in rivers waiting to be collected. It was trapped in solid white quartz, requiring blasting, tunneling, and crushing just to free it. Sadly, none of that wealth protected the native Maidu, who had lived here for generations. Miners pushed them off their land, and their story was largely left out of history. Today, Allegheny is nearly frozen in time. A few buildings, a population smaller than most classrooms, and tunnels running beneath the streets like old wounds that never fully healed. The quiet hills give way to grand scenery, where sheer canyons and towering trees define Kings Canyon National Park. Carved by the Kings River, this is one of the deepest canyons, with walls towering far above most heads. Tucked along its wetter walls and streams, ferns grow in thick, unbroken sheets. What's wild is that this canyon runs deeper than the Grand Canyon overall, yet gets a fraction of the visitors, leaving one of the continent's most dramatic features largely overlooked. Just outside the park, the canyon softens. Grizzly Falls tumbles over granite into a quiet cedar and pine pool, a roadside surprise worth every second. The best part is how easy it is to reach. No long hike, no permit, just a short walk from the road to a roaring cascade few have ever seen. It runs strongest in late spring, when snowmelt charges over the granite with a force you feel before you even get close. Most people miss the mist, whose spray keeps nearby rocks damp and creates a tiny wet pocket of mosses, ferns and small creatures hidden just steps from the dry forest. Among the cedars and within the mist, a bird works the damp bark with unusual habits. The northern flicker, a woodpecker that spends most of its time foraging on the ground. Most woodpeckers drill for insects, but these birds drop to the forest floor, raiding ant colonies with a tongue that coils inside the skull and shoots out faster than the eye can follow. It drums purely to communicate, and it will happily hammer metal drain pipes and gutters at full volume before sunrise, if that's the loudest thing available. During mating season, they drum, call and chase each other through the trees. Less a romantic courtship and more a loud, chaotic argument that somehow ends in a pair bond. They carve their nest from soft, rotting wood, and as dead trees are quietly removed from managed forests, suitable nesting spots disappear with them. The wonderful thing is, every nest it abandons gets reused by owls, squirrels, small ducks, flying squirrels, which makes one bird the canyon's most reliable landlord without even trying. Where the Flickers forest ends, Boyden Cavern begins. A marble cave where stalactites and stalagmites have been quietly building themselves in total darkness ever since. This cave isn't granite like the surrounding rock. It's marble, formed when limestone was squeezed and heated by the forces that built the mountain range. The formations grow so slowly that each drop of water seeping through the ceiling adds barely the thickness of a human hair per year, building these structures one invisible layer at a time. To me, the most humbling detail is the temperature, constant, cool, and completely unbothered by whatever is happening outside, whether heat wave or hard frost. Unfortunately, a single touch can permanently stop a formation's growth, as the oils from bare hands are enough to halt something that took thousands of years to build. Stepping back into the light, you arrive at one of California's most uncomfortable truths, Manzanar National Historic Site, where the ground bears a weight no geology can explain. During World War II, thousands of Japanese Americans, most citizens, many children, were forced from their homes to this remote desert behind barbed wire and armed guards. With most had done absolutely nothing wrong, they were locked up not for any crime, but simply for looking like the enemy someone had decided to fear. What stands today is mostly silence and wind. A few restored buildings, stone foundations, and a single cemetery marker, insisting, quietly but firmly, that this must not be forgotten. In sharp contrast to walls and wires is the wide, luminous blue of Lake Tahoe, one of the clearest lakes on the planet. The water here is purer than most bottled water sold in stores, so clean that visibility stretches far below the surface, where most lakes turn murky within a few feet. But that famous blue has little to do with clarity. It comes from algae, or rather the lack of it, with deeper blue signalling cleaner water. Think of it like a mood ring for an entire lake. The bluer it is, the better it's doing. The geology is just as dramatic. Massive fault lines split the earth, pulled apart two mountain ranges, and the drop basins slowly filled with glacial meltwater. A powerful earthquake once triggered a massive underwater landslide here, and the boulders that collapsed into the water can still be seen resting on the lake bed today. Since the mid-1900s, shoreline development has been slowly clouding that legendary clarity, disturbing the natural filters that kept the water so clean for so long. What gives me genuine hope is that restoration efforts are actually working. The lake has been getting measurably bluer again. And watching over the forest above, silent and utterly focused, is the northern goshawk, a bird that treats these treetops like its own private territory and defends every inch of it. It doesn't circle overhead, it hunts inside the forest, weaving between trunks at full speed while chasing prey through impossibly tight gaps. Its menu is surprisingly broad. Ground squirrels, chipmunks, rabbits, and smaller birds like flickers and jays, with whatever is most abundant becoming the main course. Like a fighter jet, they are fast, precise, and completely committed, regardless of what's in the way. Speed isn't even its most dangerous quality. It's the eyes, capable of tracking movement through dense forest with a sharpness that makes missing genuinely rare. Sadly, the goshawks need large, mature trees to nest, and as old-growth forest around Lake Tahoe keeps shrinking, these birds quietly lose the one thing it cannot replace. Moving through that same forest below, nose to the ground, and completely unbothered by the threat above, is the American black bear. Most people get the name wrong. These bears are often brown, cinnamon, or even blonde because the name refers to the species, not the colour. Their nose is the real superpower, capable of detecting food through walls, car doors, and sealed containers, which is why they can easily break into vehicles and cabins. Before hibernation, they eat almost non-stop. Berries, acorns, fish, insects, and any human food it finds, gaining weight so quickly. Meanwhile, chugging through Nevada's forested mountains is the historic Virginia and Truckee Railroad, an iron lifeline that once hauled silver and supplies. What makes it special is the work behind it. Workers carved track into canyon walls, raised wooden trestles over steep gorges, and drilled through solid rock by hand. At its peak, this small railroad became one of the most profitable short lines in the country, moving huge amounts of wealth from the silver boom it served. The line was short, but the wealth moving through it was enormous. Soon the railroad carried far more than ore, lumber, food, water pipes, and workers all moving along the line to supply the towns that depended on it. When the silver ran out, towns emptied, trains vanished and the tracks fell silent. Today, a restored section still carries passengers. Far to the south, water rather than steel shaped the land, carving steeply into the mountains to form Kern River Canyon. Guided by a dominant fault line, it flows straight south rather than west, which is what makes it unusual. The canyon wasn't made by force alone. The river followed a long-standing crack in the Earth's crust. The Kern is a deadly whitewater river, fast, unpredictable, and yet it draws rafters and kayakers every season. The canyon connects two worlds, the flat, hot Bakersfield Plains and the cool pine forests and mountain towns, joined by a single road along the canyon wall. Human demands now control much of the river, quietly affecting the wildlife that depends on natural rhythms. Still, life persists. Golden eagles soar above, river otters patrol the calmer pools, and the walls shelter one of the state's densest corridors of birds of prey. From here, the mountains grow grander, and the canyon unfolds into something almost too famous to need introduction: Yosemite National Park. First-time visitors are often stunned by the crowds, with more people arriving each year than the population of some small countries, all squeezing into a valley never built for them. On peak summer weekends, the park jams with bumper-to-bumper traffic, and it can take hours just to get through the gate. Yosemite is surprisingly dangerous, with falls, drownings and rockfalls claiming lives each year as granite walls shed massive chunks that can bury trails and campsites without warning. Visitors take a toll on the land. Trails wear down, soil moves, and wildlife is affected, while the granite keeps cracking and shifting as if untouched. At the centre of it all is Yosemite Valley, cradled between towering walls, where the scale and beauty that define the park come into sharpest focus. The valley floor makes everything feel small, with granite cliffs so high that even stacking the Empire State Building wouldn't reach the top. It was once filled with a glacier, which flattened the floor and carved the U-shape that makes Yosemite distinct from surrounding V-shaped canyons. After the glacier retreated, a lake filled the valley, slowly turning to the flat meadow now used for camping, driving and picnics. It even shapes its own weather. Cold air funnels down at night, creating fog, frost and sudden temperature swings that catch visitors off guard. Looking across the valley, Half Dome emerges, dominating the skyline with its unmistakable rounded peak. Most people are wrong. It was never a full dome, as glaciers stripped weaker stone and left the harder granite standing. Far underground, magma hardened into rock, and then nature slowly erased everything around it, unveiling Half Dome like a secret sculpture. The rock face changes with the light, glowing fiery orange at sunrise, turning precise grey as shadows stretch across it by afternoon. Meanwhile, quietly at the valley floor, the Yosemite Valley Chapel stands unbothered, one of the park's oldest structures, still in use, still holding weekly services. It has stood longer than most roads and buildings, watching the park grow from a remote outpost into a world-famous destination. This small wooden building has survived floods, rockfalls, harsh winters, and the valley's constant changes, staying put while hotels and roads were rebuilt around it. What moves me is that this building was never grand. It was small and simple, built for ordinary visitors, which makes its survival even more extraordinary. Just above the valley floor, snowmelt-fed Yosemite Falls thunders down in dramatic stages, with its roar reaching the valley before the water comes into view. It is extraordinary for its drop, plunging in 3 cascades with the upper fall high enough that water partly turns to mist before hitting the ledge. By late summer, this thundering giant slows to a trickle as the snowmelt runs out, leaving the cliff face nearly dry by August. Think of it like a tap connected directly to the mountains. When the snow is gone, the tap simply turns off and the performance ends until the following year. Hardly anyone realises the wind from the falling water can knock visitors off balance at the base, which makes it very dangerous. In winter, when it's cold, the spray from the falls can freeze in the air, forming a fragile ice cone at the base that looks like a small mountain. Hopping among the rocks and roots at the base of the falls, the dark-eyed junco, a small, sharp-looking bird, treats Yosemite's wet edges like its own dining room. These birds are fascinating because their colour varies so widely across North America that scientists once thought they were different species. In Yosemite, this small bird takes a great risk. It nests on the ground, tucking eggs under rocks, roots or grass, right where foxes, ravens and squirrels walk daily. In winter, high-elevation juncos move downhill to the valley floor for food and warmth, with some staying close and others migrating across continents. And looming from the valley floor with staggering presence is El Capitan, a single unbroken granite wall so sheer and vertical it became the ultimate test for climbers from across the globe. It's more than just a cliff. It is the exposed core of an old volcanic plumbing system, the softer rock long eroded, leaving only the hardest granite standing. For decades it was thought unclimbable until one person reached the summit without ropes or gear in under 4 hours, an achievement called the moon landing of climbing. Once a year in late winter, the setting sun hits a small waterfall, just right, turning it molten orange. Known as the Firefall, it lasts only minutes, drawing photographers who camp for days. Ruling these rocky slopes, the Yellow-Bellied Marmot, whistling ground squirrel, defends its granite kingdom with astonishing noise, indifferent to humans or spectacle. Its survival of Yosemite's brutal winters is astounding, hibernating so deeply that its pulse nearly stops and body temperature drops near freezing. A marmot spends more of its life asleep than awake, then compresses eating, socialising, mating, and raising young into the short summer window. Its whistle is more than noise. Different calls warn of specific threats, sending other marmots into burrows before predators arrive. Underneath their playground, Vernal Fall crashes into a churning pool, spraying the trail in a stunning, dangerous display. Its unique location sets it apart, plunging in the middle of an active hiking route and drenching thousands of visitors daily, whether they plan to get wet or not. Mist coats every rock and railing, turning granite into slick, wet glass. Rainbows form constantly in the spray, vivid and full arc, tempting visitors closer than is safe. It is one of Yosemite's most dangerous spots, with strong currents that can sweep people over the edge in seconds, often when they step too close for a photo. From the base, the water gathers, joining the Merced River and carrying the snowmelt downstream as it shapes everything along its path. Designated officially as a wild and scenic river, it is protected from dams, diversions, and development, one of the few in California with that legal safeguard. Its personality changes with the seasons. Spring snowmelt floods the valley, while by late summer it slows to a gentle, clear stream. You can say that it's wild in April and calm by August. Ecologically, the Merced is vital, linking meadows, forests and wetlands, supporting rainbow trout, and providing water for abundant wildlife. Past flood control, roads and campgrounds damaged its natural flow, forcing the park to remove infrastructure and restore riverbanks. Restoration has worked. Compacted, paved and strip sections now support wildlife unseen there for decades. In the remote upper watershed, almost no visitor reaches, lives one of the park's most elusive residents, the wolverine, rarely seen and often forgotten. About the size of a medium dog, it surprises with its ferocity, chasing grizzlies and mountain lions from their kills with sheer aggression and stamina. It's like the smallest kid in school, not just standing up to the biggest bully, but winning every time, without hesitation. Its secret is endurance, with wide, snowshoe-like paws that let it travel far in thick snow and move freely through the winter expanse. Their territory can stretch so far that cameras may never capture the same individual twice, which makes their populations hard to track. The mating system is extraordinary. Females can delay embryo development for months, timing births perfectly with favourable conditions. Sadly, wolverines are threatened by climate change, as they rely on heavy, lasting snow to den, raise young and store food, and warmer winters are shrinking the snow too quickly. Moving out of the remote mountains, you reach Mariposa Grove, where the giant trees stand like timeless guardians, as if you're in another world. These trees aren't just tall, they are the largest living things by volume on Earth, growing, burning and recovering for thousands of years, long before most human civilizations existed. The star is the grizzly giant, whose lower branch is wider than most full-grown trees in the grove. Struck by lightning and fire repeatedly, it survives because flames clear competition and trigger cones, while its thick bark acts as armour, turning each burn into a survival advantage. Another marvel is the tunnel tree, the last living tunnel tree on Earth, still growing around the carved opening after its companion was lost to heavy snow. Astonishingly, all these giants grow from seeds no larger than oat flakes, yet each holds the potential to become the largest organism on the planet. Sharing the canopy is one of the park's most ghostly hunters, the great grey owl, perfectly camouflaged so most visitors never notice it. It is North America's largest owl by wingspan, yet most of that size is illusion. Thick feathers hide a surprisingly small bird, perfectly built for Sierra Nevada winters. Its facial disc acts like a satellite dish, funneling sound so precisely it can detect a rodent moving under packed snow from far away. The owl can crash through thick snow and emerge with prey, hunting entirely by sound, solving the acoustic puzzle that snow creates. Mating adds pressure. Males hunt almost constantly, while females incubate, doubling the workload once chicks hatch. Roughly 2/3 of California's great grey owls live in Yosemite, which makes this park essential to the species' survival. Yet they remain vulnerable. They need open meadows beside old forest, a rare combination with little room for error. Leaving the shadowed canopy, the forest quiet gives way to Bridal Veil Fall, sending mist across the trail before you even see the water. Its name comes from physics, not romance. Wind catches the falling water so forcefully it spreads sideways, drifting like fabric in the breeze. Bridal Veil flows year-round, fed by a system that keeps water moving through even the driest months. The waterfall drops from a hanging valley, carved by a smaller glacier above the main floor, leaving the water free-falling into empty air. The mist pushed by the wind keeps rocks and vegetation constantly wet, creating a unique microclimate found nowhere else in the valley. The Ahuanechi called it Pohono, the spirit of the puffing wind, a name that honours the same powerful gusts shaping the falls. Visitors often miss the true essence of the falls. The mist, the wind, the sound and the cold, distracted by crowds and cameras. This is the Sierra Nevada mountain range, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Florida swamps and wetland region, check out this video.